All right. Checking in with the final chapter, chapter 7 of The Hill of Dreams by Arthur Machen, where I guess spoiler, since I'm just talking about the final chapter, I'll talk about the book in general. But so it's an odd book because it sort of all kind of blends into one big fever dream, but um, he slightly writes himself at the beginning of this chapter, like he's been like kind of going down real despair about not being able to write. He seems to kind of put himself up a bit, like his quest to write the great book, but also just to get kind of lost in his own kind of fevered imaginings, and the kind of the obsession with the Roman fort and with the various women, uh, Annie, and this bronze-haired woman that he met at that kind of orgiastic night market. Um, he gets he's it's within these chapters that you kind of find out what maybe kind of finally did him in, because he's like, okay, I'm really down. Oh, I can't go back to that scene at the night market. It's just going to drag me down too much. It's too horrifying. It's too enticing, I think, is the thing. It's like there's definitely a strong link here between horror and also desire, and them being kind of combined together, and also the idea of kind of that feminine figure and this kind of idea of a Sabbath with kind of a demon woman, and what that'll do to him. But I think the real blow that happens in this chapter is that his father dies, and it's like he's kind of going, like, "Oh, I'm going to go home," but then he goes, "Oh, wait a minute, I can't go home because my father's died, and there is no home anymore." And there's just that kind of that, like, okay, this isn't present in your mind at all times thing. We have other things like where, like, oh, I think I talked to my doctor. I have a vague memory of talking to my doctor about something and him warning, but I can't really remember. It's like we have a lot of this of like you're getting all the signposts of like Lucian is really not connected with reality, and but yeah, so his father has died, and he kind of like he gets a letter and saying, like, oh, he was looking forward to you coming home for Christmas. He really enjoyed your letters, even though you didn't write him very many letters. And Lucian is sort of like, well, all I would have to talk to him about is not being able to write my book and my kind of weird ravings. So that wasn't going to be great. So I didn't write him that often. But he feels sorry about the whole thing about the Christmas, and the whole thing of the pudding, and him asking for a pudding, like, so early in the year, because he knew that Lucian liked it. It was like, it's pathetic that way. But Lucian really seems to kind of go downhill from there, and he talks about this house, this terrible, rotten house with peeling wallpaper, and he sees like there's somebody sitting in there, and I think it's like and you get the kind of hint that, oh, I think it's Lucian who is sitting in there, and he just kind of seems to go off the deep end, and it's like he's he goes back to this idea of the uh, the woman who's gonna kind of beckoning him to this dark Sabbath, and it's like flames coming out of her nipples, and in the end he's chasing after her, and he catches her, and is like, is seduces her with with kind of awful caresses, and in the end he's they're in this, it just goes on and on like this, and he's and in the end he's captured her, and she's enfolded him, and they've kind of like embraced, and she's like, he lets out kind of just a gurgle, and you almost think like, oh god, this is like the death rattle. And indeed, at the end, he's just consumed, and all there is the silence. And then a light goes on, and a woman comes into the room and finds him dead. And it's a woman with bronze hair, and curls, and it's like, ah, did he actually use this, what seems to be kind of a landlady, as kind of like a projection into his something he used in his imagination? And she talks about how he was going up to this house and rattling on the gates and crying out that it was his home, and it's like people there had no idea who he was. And there's Joe, who seems to be her lover, and it's like, like, well, look at, like, he got into his head that he could write a book, and like, look, here's this, there's this neat manuscript, but it's all scribbled in, like, mostly illegible, like only every other word, once in a while a word is actually legible. And he's left her everything. He's left her all of his money. And Joe's like, oh, and there's no question of foul play. It's like, no, no, no. He was showing, that he was gonna kind of kick it right from the. His doctor was worried about him, and he's just being kind of odd. And yeah, he's got this little amber vial, which seems to be some sort of a drug, whether it was supplied by this woman or I wonder if it was supplied by this woman. But yeah, the final scene is like, holding up the lamp, and it's shining into like the dull caverns of his eye, like a furnace, and going like it's like his head's like a skull, and there's a furnace inside, just like, whoa. And that is the end of the Hill of Dreams. And yes, they lay down. Oh, and sorry, and they do lay down in the end, in that Roman fort, in that thing, and that's where they consummate this Black Sabbath. So it's a mood piece. There's some parts of it I thought that were comedic. It's interesting that it ends with such a conclusive thing of, and the guy was insane, and he died, and his writing was just ravings, which is odd. I mean, it's sort of the doomed artist thing, but Mackin has written this book where we have sort of in his voice, so that has survived. It's not the manuscript. It's not like they found the manuscript and this is the manuscript you're reading right now, dear reader. No, it's he's lost in madness, and it's only this other. It's Arthur Machen who's like, this is the route I almost went down, but I didn't. And here's my imagining of it. Here's imagining of how I would have died if it had gone down wrong. Like, maybe the madness had overtaken me, or maybe my father had died, and I was left cast adrift. There's just also just the whole thing of the Venus, the Amber Venus, the bronze-haired woman, Annie. This whole thing of kind of like the great desire for the feminine, for female, but also the great fear of the feminine and female, which does kind of put me back into the kind of the Oscar Wilde, Dorian Gray, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, of around these periods of, like, you can see that this is being kind of the echo of stuff like that. And also, I just think about the sorrows of young Werther, of another kind of thing of a doomed artist, of a fellow whose mind isn't working quite right, and this being a portrait of that. So yeah, those are my thoughts so far on the Hill of Dreams. I'll let it percolate and try and do a bit more organized of a review on the weekend. Yeah, so that's my thoughts. All right, more videos later.